All right, I want to play this clip of Sheldon Whitehouse, senator from Rhode Island. And this is interesting because, like we started off in this conversation, there was some skepticism about the both the sort of the functioning of the Senate if you hold impeachment, and also will there be a political price? Will looking back and not moving forward, will that cost the Democrats? I hear Sheldon Whitehouse say this type of thing, and it sounds to me like they're realizing, actually, no, this is actually helpful politically. This is clip number 3.
Senator, I want to ask you about something you said last night and give you an opportunity to sort of clarify. Senators Cruz, Senators Hawley, you told Lawrence O'Donnell last night on our air that there may have been, shall we say, some I don't know, reluctance by some Republicans to create a delay long enough to allow that mob to make their way in. What did you mean by that? You weren't suggesting that some of your Republican colleagues were complicit, were you?
That is what the Senate Ethics Committee needs to look at. And I hope that they do a thorough job of looking into it, because we cannot count on the FBI and other investigative groups to look at the conduct of senators, because senators are protected by the speech and debate clause from a lot of investigation. So it's on us as the Senate to make sure we fully understand what our colleagues were up to. But when the president is calling a senator and asking him to delay further the legitimate process of certification so that the mob can interrupt that process, that's a pretty compelling statement by the President of the United States. And it opens a very important line of inquiry for the Ethics Committee.
You're talking about that phone call to Senator Tuberville?
Correct.
Is the Ethics Committee, Senator, launching an investigation into this? Or is this something that you think should happen?
They've been asked to. The letter has been received. 7 senators signed that letter. And as best I can tell, they're in the initial process of reviewing whether to open the matter and go forward with a full and formal investigation.
Well, the Ethics Committee used to be evenly divided.
I mean, that's a pretty serious, well, it's not quite an accusation, but it is an insinuation that there was more. I mean, there's a reason why Rudy Giuliani is calling these people saying, we just need a little bit more time. And it's probably because he feels like he can. Like they've all been briefed about what was going to happen. And the idea was, the reason why Donald Trump wanted to have that rally was in some way to influence the outcome of that vote, or maybe even the taking of that vote, depending on which way he thought it was going to go.
Yeah. And so this is actually pretty bold. Like, I do like to see this coming from Democrats. Like, for Democrats, it is a pretty bold move, and it needs to be done because the underlying accusations are, I know you've discussed this ad nauseum, right? This is a serious thing that we're dealing with. They literally tried to overthrow our democracy. My only hesitation with that clip is that it seemed like the media was a little more hesitant to actually take it there than the senator, because honestly, the competing narratives there, we have, at a minimum, Sam, there has to be competing narratives when you have one from Fox News that is complete alternate reality. We can't be timid in terms of our leaders or our media in calling a thing and identifying the real problem. So it was good to see that clip from a politician's point of view, but then also the hesitance. I feel like the media is still in that world where they aren't sure yet in that exchange whether or not they should put the hammer down in terms of the narrative. No, this is a serious accusation. We're talking about the whole thing here. They could have effectively overthrown our democracy that day, and the president was a part of it. So, of course, there need to be investigations at every level of this.
That point that you're making about the sort of the more mainstream media, if you will, and that's a clip from MSNBC. It's obviously associated with being a more liberal than let's say, well, certainly in Fox,
right?
Arguably with CNN. But the point being is that I think there is a reflexive
Yes.
impulse by the media at this moment to say the same thing that Biden said, that Obama said, like the fever's going to break.
No.
One of the things about this impeachment that I think is extremely helpful for those of us who want the Democrats to use every arrow in their quiver to provide material benefit for people, particularly during a pandemic, but more broadly speaking, and to do it without having to sort of, bow to some false sense of bipartisanship where it doesn't exist. I think it's helpful that the media sees that, like, hey, remember Lindsey Graham, who you thought was such a, sort of a bipartisan maverick? Well, look at him now. I mean, all of them. Like, I think it's almost as important of a lesson for these folks, and sadly, because the Democrats respond so much to them generally, to teach them that, like, look, there's no partner here. There's no way for you to mold the Republicans into the party you want them to be.
Right. And if you think about it, like, we just simply cannot have a functioning, first of all, the propaganda that comes from mainstream media in general is the bane of our democracy, right? But if you have two competing narratives, one that is in complete la la land and fiction, Fox News, you can't have the counterbalance be people are like, oh, are we sure we want to investigate that? No, like, we've already lost.
Right. It's an interesting point. All right, let's turn to what took place in terms of the COVID relief this week. There was obviously a lot of, and I think we should probably stipulate up front, I think that you agree that to not, and particularly being from Georgia, to not just say $2,000 check at this point is just sort of like a complete unforced error. The reports are that we're talking about a $45 billion difference. I know that's weird math for people in terms of going from 1,400 to 2 million, to 2,000. But because some of this is going to be clawed back with taxes and whatnot, that it ultimately would have been just like a $45 billion on a $1.9 trillion bill. But you don't have the ability to say the $2,000 check. With that said, the House passed the $1,400 at the same threshold level as the past checks. So nobody who got checks before are not going to get some. And they expanded it by having adult dependents also covered, which is, several million people. So there's more money going out the door. And it turns out there's not going to be this threshold. What's your sense of that? And Biden apparently supports that.
Yeah. So this is the interesting thing. I think Democrats know the same thing Republicans know when it comes to the American people. And this is in no way, form, or fashion to insult the American people. But when you are so desperate for help, you'll be glad to get that $1,400 check. And I think that's what Democrats are counting on. They're counting on paying the political price right now, but they know when the $1,400 lands into the banks of whoever gets it, people are going to be grateful. But I think that's more of a testament to how broken Americans are. Like really at this juncture, anyway, I'll say that for my show, because to me, this is a complete abdication of their responsibility.
No, go tell.
Listen. I'm going to be honest with you. At this juncture, the fact that who are the Democrats trying to pacify here? Like, who are they saving this $600 for? Right? Because if Republicans did this, we would be up in arms. We would run political ads against Republicans for this exact move. So I want to know who they're trying to help here. Right? Because it's a rounding error in a $1.9 trillion. Come on. $45 billion is a lot, but in a $1.9 trillion bill, it is a rounding error. So my question is, who are they trying to help here? Because it's not the American people. They're counting on the American people being so broken that we'll be happy to see that $1,400 check. And I know everybody will be happy to see that $1,400 check. But still, it's just a testament to how broken we are as American citizens.
It's so bizarre because you hear every time now you hear anybody talk about, any of the Democratic politicians talk about the $1,400. They feel compelled to remind everybody about the $600 that came in December. We saw Chuck Schumer out today, and I'm just talking as a political matter, right? Although I think there is a very good argument from a financial matter. But let's just talk from just strictly a political matter. if you're out there and you're having to say $1,400 check, and then you're saying, and also, of course, we want credit for the $600 that you got under Donald Trump as well, and or Chuck Schumer's out there going, $1,400 check, and then talking about all the other programs in there and saying, a family of four is going to get $8,000. I don't know what the specific number is, and I'm talking here as a political matter. You can see they feel compelled to cover for that. So there's an awareness amongst Democratic politicians that this is a deficiency, and no one can come out and explain
why.
Who
is this? Why? If there is a valid reason, make your case. But if you do not have a valid reason and you're shortchanging people who have been struggling for a year now, there are people who started quarantining a year ago, right? And we've gotten maybe two checks, and as opposed to other nations that don't have a fraction of our wealth being able to support their citizens through the entirety of the pandemic. The Democrats need an answer for this. And don't get me wrong, let's get the checks out to the people, because a lot of people need that $1,400 right now. Let's not hold it up. Let's do it. But at the end of the day, Democrats need an answer for this.
Yeah, it's just, I just, as a political matter, it's ridiculous.